Hey book nerds, welcome to my channel. So today I am wearing my brand new Ravenclaw jumper because I am doing a non-fiction book haul. Yep, I got this jumper the other day and I think it's already possibly my favourite jumper that I own. In case you can't see it, it's like the school jumpers. So I got it from Primark, it was £14 and they do one for every house. I'm actually not in Ravenclaw, I'm a Hufflepuff, but I used to think I was a Ravenclaw and I still really like the Ravenclaw colours, so I've got a lot of clothing that's Ravenclaw. I would absolutely love to get the Hufflepuff version of this as well, but they didn't have it in the Primark I went to, so I'm going to have to keep hunting for it. But anyway, the actual point of this video is I'm doing a giant non-fiction book haul. So what happened is I work in a discount bookshop, and for Christmas every year they give us 50% off as staff discount for 2 weeks only. And it turns out we had a lot of non-fiction books that I wanted to buy, so I bought them all. I'm going to just start going through them. They're in various categories, but they're in a giant pile and they're too heavy for me to lift up to do the whole here's all the books I hauled thing. So I'm just going to go through them, and they're not arranged by category, I'm sorry, I probably should have done that. So anyway, the first one is really random and it is the year of living Danishly. So I went to Copenhagen last year with my partner, we went over summer and I absolutely loved it. Denmark is one of the places with the highest level of happiness in the world, and this book is meant to be about that. It's meant to be about why, as a population, they're so happy and content. And yeah, I just thought it'd be cute to read. We actually discussed, me and my partner, potentially moving to Denmark one day, and we might still do that. I've just finished my master's degree and they've just finished their bachelor's degree, so we're both at a kind of a crossroads. I want to go into research, which means I'll probably do a PhD first, but yeah, we're hoping to move to Copenhagen someday, so I figured I should read about Denmark more. Yeah, the next two are part of the same series, and they're just little books. It is Why We Think the Things We Think and Why We Do the Things We Do. So this one's about psychology, this one's about philosophy. I was a psychology student. I did my undergraduate in psychology and I did a master's degree in clinical psychology. And basically I have a lot of psychology books in this haul because ever since finishing my master's, like I said, I do want to go into research and I want to keep on top of the field, and I want to remind myself all the things that you forget when you stop studying a subject. So I just kind of got this for fun. The philosophy one, I would love to learn more about philosophy. I have problems with every philosophy student I've ever spoken to about it. They haven't really... I'm sure there are plenty of lovely philosophy students, don't get me wrong. It's just I've only spoken to about 3, and all 3 of them have been very much talking about their subject for hours at a time without bothering to check if I'm actually following what they're saying. So this is a very basic book. It's going to serve as my introduction to philosophy and I'd like to learn more about it, which is why I got those ones. The next one is another psychology book. I've actually started reading this one a bit, and it is What Would Freud Do? So this is great. It's about so I never did any Freud, I'll add first. In psychology, in England anyway, you do not study Freud because Freud has been largely discredited. And while he contributed a lot to the field of psychology, he had a lot of terrible, terrible ideas. And yeah, we basically never did anything about Freud. But this book isn't really about Freud, it's about psychology in general. And it's in the style of a self-help section, so it's got little questions like that with illustrations, and then it's got the psychological approach to that question, or it gives you an example of a study that's been done about that question. And yeah, it's really fun. I haven't got very far with it. I need to read more of it really because I am enjoying it, but again, I just kind of got it as a broader look at psychology. The next one is The Unbelievable Truth. Now this is based off a radio show I started listening to You get people who are giving little speeches about topics, and the topics are entirely false. So the topic might be dolphins, and they'll just talk nonsense about dolphins, but within the speech there will be some true facts that just sound as unrealistic as the fake facts, and the contestants have to try and buzz and say if they think something is true. And this is just like it's just got the various topics that people have spoken about. It's basically the show in book form, but with some additions, I believe. And yeah, I just wanted to read it because I couldn't catch up on all the old shows. They didn't have them all on the BBC Radio iPlayer, so yeah, I just thought it'd be a fun little Christmas fact book. And it was £1.50. So yeah, all these books have got giant price stickers on, for which I'm sorry. But bear in mind that I had my 50% discount, so all these books were insanely cheap. The next one is a history book, and it is Great Stories from History, 365 stories, and it's got a historical story for each day of the year. I think I'm going to start reading this on January the 1st of 2019, and then just read a story a day so I get through it in the entire year. I just thought it was a cool concept, and history is one of the things like philosophy that I want to learn more about, and I haven't really had the chance to, and now I've got some free time, I'd like to learn more. So that's that one. The next one was actually a recommendation from my old housemate. He bought it first, and then I was going to borrow it, but I moved out before I got the chance. And it is The Geek's Guide to Sci-Fi Cinema. I'm not sure how I'll feel about this. I am interested in film, and I'm moderately interested in sci-fi. It really depends on the type of sci-fi. But I just thought I would give this a try, because it's got some cool things about it. It goes through each iconic film in sci-fi history and talks about it a bit, and I thought that'd be quite interesting. Yeah. Next book is Pavlov's Dog. It's 50 Important Experiments in Psychology History. Again, I've probably heard of most of these. I did do a psychology degree. I kind of got this more to remind myself, this one specifically, because you learn about a lot of studies in psychology, and obviously having done my masters it's more specific, and I've forgotten a lot of the things that you covered, say I covered 4 years ago in my first year, where it's all broad. And it's just good to remind yourself of those things, and I think it's quite interesting. It just goes through iconic studies and explains them in pop psychology terms. The next one I got weird looks for buying, and I'll explain why, but I probably don't need to explain why. It is Eat Me, and it's the history of cannibalism. So I had a lovely conversation with a customer who bought this about how interesting we both thought the idea was, and then when I went to buy it myself, we'd sold out of them. We got them back in stock when I had my 50% discount, and I was so happy when I was unboxing them that I was like, oh yes, this book I've finally waited for has come in. So my colleague obviously goes, oh, what book is it? And I have to explain that it's the history of cannibalism. This is more, I have a fascination with certain dark aspects. I blame my psychology side, so I've got a couple of books in a minute from this pile about serial killers, for example. And I like reading about the dark psychology of people, and I think the history of cannibalism kind of falls into that, as well as obviously being with my interest in history. This is near my top of the list that I want to read, actually. It sounds really cool, and it's got about mythology as well, so it's got where the origins of certain mythological tales regarding cannibalism come from, and yeah, I just thought it was really interesting. The next two are also in the same series, and they are Unsolved Crimes and Unsolved Science. So these are really heavy. They're a lot heavier than they look. I think it's the paper. It's got like shiny photo paper in it. So the Unsolved Science one is what it sounds like. It's just got aspects of scientific study that haven't been fully resolved yet. Unsolved Crimes, again, exactly what it sounds like. Yeah, just I had a broad interest in them. That's really the reason I bought them. And also this is quite short. Each page has only got about 2 or 3 paragraphs on. So again, these are the kind of books I'll read over Christmas, where I want to read fact books, but I can just pick them up and put them down quite easily without worrying about where I'm up to or anything like that. So the next 3 are also in the same series, and as I get through this pile I realise more and more that people may judge me as being a little odd. But so without further ado, we have Hung, Drawn and Quartered, which is the history of torture, history of execution is that one. Shot, Stabbed and Poisoned, which is the history of assassination. And then Secret Societies and Creepy Cults, which is the history of societies and cults. Yeah, I just think these all sound really interesting. I don't really know much. All of my historical knowledge comes from when I was a kid and I used to read all horrible history books all the time. So I knew loads as a kid, and then obviously I stopped and I just didn't replace them with adult history books. But I bought the Hung, Drawn and Quartered one first because I thought that sounded really interesting. I'm least interested in the Secret Society one, but I kind of wanted the whole set because they look really nice together. And yeah, they're just kind of the same thick photo books. They also weigh a ton. Right, we're getting through this. So the next book is Reaching Down the Rabbit Hole. This is about, it's a neurology book, so still psychology, and it is about a psychiatrist, I believe, and some of the patients he's had that have really odd psychoses. Yeah, it sounds really interesting. Obviously I bought it because it's Alice in Wonderland and psychology, which I love, and yeah, I just thought it'd be interesting. I thought, I've had some lecturers who are psychiatrists and everything they talk about is really interesting. Well, not everything, but when they talk about patients it's really interesting, and obviously I do clinical psychology, so this is kind of just to get a more neurological perspective on that, I guess. Next book, I can't really justify. It is 100 Things They Don't Want You to Know, and it's a conspiracy theory book. This is the only conspiracy theory book I own. I haven't actually read anything about conspiracy theories, which is why I bought this. So don't go thinking that I'm a giant conspiracy theorist or anything. But yeah, I haven't heard anything about conspiracy theories, and I thought it would be interesting to learn about them. This book might end up making me very angry because conspiracy theories usually do. But it was £1.50, and I thought it's always interesting to get a glimpse into the way people's brains work, even if the way they work isn't how my brain works. So the next one is The Mysteries of History, and this is another history book, and it's about kind of like the Unsolved Science and Unsolved Crimes ones. It's aspects of history that aren't clearly defined or haven't clearly been solved. I bought it for basically the same reasons. It sounds interesting. It's split up into sections, so it's got different types of history in it, which is really good because my my interest in history is very broad. Yeah, so I got that one. We're getting through it. The next one, another psychology book, How Your Brain Works. It's a New Scientist book. I love these books. Again, it's just very detailed. It's more cognitive neuroscience, which we didn't do much of in my masters. I did a lot of it at undergraduate, but we didn't do a lot of it in my masters, and again it's just to kind of refresh and learn some new ideas in that field while I try and figure out what specific area of psychology I want to go into in terms of research. Yeah, that one. Next two are those books I promised about serial killers. So we have Talking with Psychopaths and Savages and Talking with Female Serial Killers, both by the same guy, Christopher Berry D. And it's basically him, as far as I'm aware, interviewing serial killers and psychopaths and people who've done terrible things, and then interviewing the female serial killers. I don't know how this is as long as, if not longer, than the presumably male version, because I have another book about serial killers which I have read, and I know for a fact that in that book there is 100 pages of male serial killers and 20 pages of female serial killers, because female serial killers are not that common. So maybe he goes into more depth with these ones. But yeah, I just bought them. Again, interest in psychology. Yeah. Next one is one of my newest ones. I got these over the course of 2 weeks when I had the 50% off, and this was like a last minute, my discount's about to run out purchase. And it is 101 Problems from the Armchair Scientist. I bought this because it's got on the front about headphones being tangled, and I remember reading in an article ages ago the science behind why your headphones get tangled, and I wanted to remind myself of why that actually was, because it's a fact I like to bring up in conversation sometimes, because I do that, and I'd like to be more precise about the details. And it's got loads of similar things like that, so it's got everyday science, which is something I'd like to broaden my knowledge in. And the next one, similar thing, similar last minute buy, is the periodic table. And this just goes through every element and tells you about it. One of my best friends did a chemistry degree, and it would be fun to memorise facts about elements and then surprise her with my knowledge. Yeah, it's just a lot of the reasons for buying these books are that I am a nerd and I do like reading and learning things, and I want to learn things that I don't know already. So yeah. The next ones I'll go through really quickly because they're all in the same series and this video is going to be so long otherwise. But we have the science book, we have the literature book, and we have the crime book. These are really good. I have the psychology book and the philosophy book already. Haven't read the philosophy one, read most of the psychology one. If you're looking for books to give you a general overview of subjects, they're by DK, and they're all the something book. These are really good. They're really accessible. They've got really nice layouts. Everything's broken down nice and easily for you. And they're not that expensive. I bought those for, like, when they're full price, they're £5 each, and they're quite expensive on Amazon, I think, but you can usually get them from discounted bookshops, especially around Christmas, and they make really nice presents as well. So I can highly recommend any in those series. Other two is Success Psychology and Stress Psychology. So as I mentioned, I recently finished my degree, and I know what I want to do with my life, but I'm not achieving my goals right now currently, and I bought these to kind of make myself feel more motivated. I go back and forth on motivation, and I figured if it was psychology related as well, it would make me pay attention. I can't stand self-help books, but if I can trick my brain into being like, oh well, this is scientific fact, then it might be easier to motivate myself to be more ambitious, because that is something I struggle with in terms of translating my ambitions into how I present myself in job interviews, for example. Yeah, and the final book is The Secret World of the Brain. It's another psychology book, another neuroscience book. This one has lots of pretty pictures of the brain in it. And yeah, basically I want to increase my knowledge of neuroscience. This book might help me. So that is all of the books. I'm not going to lift them because I physically can't. I'll try and get a thumbnail that has a nice picture of all of them. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you think any of these books sound particularly interesting. Let me know if you think I'm a little bit weird for having so many books about serial killers and cannibalism and other unpleasant things. Please give it a thumbs up if you did enjoy this video, it helps me out massively, and I hope to see you next time.